Hey, welcome to Garry's Shortlist podcast. Today I'm having a great discussion with Carrie-Lynn Hotson. Carrie-Lynn will answer all the questions that you may have had in your head in every job interview you've ever gone for. She will tell you the do's and don'ts. She's a leading authority coach, also known as the job interview coach. I found it fascinating to chat with her about some of the things that we do and we don't do well in that interview process. There's something for everyone in this one. Sit back and enjoy. Carrie-Lynn Hotson, thank you very much for joining Garry's Shortlist podcast today. And you're all the way from Ontario, Canada. What's it like there today?
It is cold and rainy, and we don't think summer is ever coming.
Well, how was your last summer? Your last summer was pretty good, wasn't it?
It was quite hot.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this one, I don't know. I'm still crossing my fingers because I want a summer, but so far it's looking pretty dismal.
Yeah, well, in Sydney, at least in Sydney this year, we've had bucket loads of rain. We've probably had more rain than we've ever imagined. And I look out the window today and the rain is back, and it hasn't been very kind for the construction industry. So I shouldn't laugh because it's really impacted the industry. But Carrie-Lynn, we understand that you're the guru, the leading authority on job interviews, and you are an actual coach in job interviewing. And when you and I have spoken previously, we've spoken about, me being naive enough to say, are there people out there that actually coach people on how to do a job interview? And I mean specialists. I don't just mean someone that calls themselves, in the leadership space or whatever it may be. I'm talking an expert such as yourself with 25 years experience in HR and executive roles. You've done countless interviews in your lifetime. You have, you've written hundreds and hundreds of questions around the interview process. And then it made me reflect on the interviews that I've had. Have I done well? Have I done poorly? And I guess I have lots of questions about the do's and don'ts. And I'm sure you'll enlighten me today if we get a chance. And for our listeners, I really encourage you to take on board the expertise that Carrie-Lynn is going to give us today from, the HR hiring end of the stick, as opposed to you being a candidate walking in thinking, I've got this in the bag. And in fact, I think, Carrie-Lynn, we spoke previously about people that go to university for 5 years and then come out and then go, right, I've got 5 minutes to prepare for a job. And I've never done that before, perhaps, or I haven't been very successful in that in the past. And of course, they can go to yourself and get the coaching they need. But I'm just astounded that people don't spend the time in this space.
I think that's really fair. And as an HR specialist who was literally sitting on the other side of the table doing these interviews, I really felt for the candidates. And that's why I started this business in the first place, because I've seen their resumes. I've seen their applications. They're fantastic candidates, but they've never been taught how to prepare for an interview. They don't know what they're supposed to do. And then they panic when we ask them a question that they don't know what the answer is. And it's really unfortunate. It's awful. I would literally have to sit there and watch somebody's dreams crumble in front of me, knowing they had invested thousands and thousands of dollars to build that resume and get that education. And so I want to help people understand this process. It's not that scary. I know interviews seem terrible, but it's not actually that scary if you know how to prepare properly.
Would I be right in saying it's, and this is my personal experience, it's never been scary for me when I've got a job and I'm just fishing.
Right.
But when you need a job to put food on the table, there's this, I guess, an extra level of anxiety. But again, I point out that I never sort of, in my career, I've never reached out to somebody for some expertise, particularly as you go up the corporate ladder. I think in one of my roles, I went through 6 interviews or something. And I think by the 6th interview, I was saying pretty much the same stuff, and I didn't have any more buzzwords, right?
Yeah. And so that's the fun of my job, is sometimes I'm starting with people who've never really gone into a professional setting, never done a professional interview. They've done the typical, simple job interview where, can you work on Friday? Do you have a car? Are you reliable? Great, we'll hire you. To actually having to move into a professional interview. And then I also coach people who often people are in a job, they like it, but maybe they're getting bored of it. Maybe they'd like to expand, try something new. But the idea of trying to do an interview for another job terrifies them so much they won't try.
Right. I've never thought of that.
Oh, it's sad. People will tell me, oh, I don't want to ever have to do another interview. Really? No, like just because one was terrible or seemed like you failed, let's try it again. But I'll coach you this time and I'll teach you. Um, and then the other piece is, like you said, people that want to move up into management positions. And often where that one's tough is because realistically, you're very good at the job. You know, your coworkers will tell you, oh, great boss, great leader, great team leader. They're great at the job. But then they go to do the interview and maybe it's buzzwords, but it's probably more not knowing how to explain what they do in leadership terms, and they don't get the job. And then a lot of people are mad because they're like, well, they're a great supervisor. Why didn't you hire them? Because the reality is the HR people and the interviewers, they've got to mark you on what you say. And if you don't say it, you don't get the marks, which means you didn't get the interview. And
Yeah.
they gave it to somebody else who's never even done the job. And then everybody's frustrated,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
Do some people just suck at job interviews?
Yes, but it's a very small group of people. And it's usually the people that you're interviewing for the wrong reason. You don't actually want this job. You just want the title the job has or the money the job gives you. But you don't actually want the job, and that arrogance or that ignorance will come across. Or
Yeah.
you're interviewing for something you don't even like to do. You hate
Yeah.
talking to people, and you're interviewing for a job where you're going to have to talk to people. What? Why are you wasting my time? Why are you here? That's more where the frustration comes in.
Sure. Sure. And I know it's early in the piece in this conversation, but what are three key things that you could broadly suggest to a group of people listening to this podcast? Three things that they could pick up on to really improve their chances in a job interview.
Number one, know the job you're applying for. Know that specific job, that specific organization. Because, Garry, I'm going to assume, I mean you would know much more than me. Within the construction industry, are all the jobs the same? If it has the same title, are they the exact same across the entire industry?
Oh, very similar. There could be some slight nuances with, the titles themselves, particularly in safety, right? We call them safety coordinators, safety advisors, safety managers, project safety. But sometimes they're similar, sometimes they're slightly different. But I think I know you're right, because I've had some people that I've interviewed in the past when I was in the hiring space in my previous role, and they've come in thinking that they're coming for a manager role, and I say, no, that's actually the title. Unfortunately, you're not a manager. You're not managing it much at all, right?
Exactly. And so they start to speak of things that they want to do. What are the roles and responsibilities of the job? And they start to tell you things they're not going to be doing.
Yeah.
So now you as a panelist don't know if they actually want this job or they don't want this job. And the other piece is, I was actually just working with a client just before you and I got on. And they had an aha moment. They realized that when they have interviewed in the past, they would always take the job description and read, okay, it says, please prove that you can do multitasking. And so they would come up with their example of multitasking. But they never took it to the level of, oh, and in this job, this is why you need me to be able to multitask. This is how I'll use it in this job. And they realized, you know what? I have never done that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're leaving marks on the table.
Yeah. Okay.
You're not getting the full marks. So that's number one. You've got to know the job you're applying for. You have to understand why we're asking things. And then from that, you build from there. You should start there. And then you build your examples to match that particular job that you're applying for. we talked about managers, people wanting to go for management positions. So one of the things people will do often is they will give me answers as if they're interviewing for the job they're already in. They're proving to me that they're really, really good worker. That's great. But you're supposed to be proving to me you can be the manager.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? Um, so working on your examples, working on the answers that you're going to give, writing them down, typing them out, whatever you're doing. And then you have to practice. Because so often when I do a debrief with a client or not a client, when I was actually doing the interviews and tell somebody you didn't get the job, I would ask, how did you practice? Well, I wrote out my answers. Okay, but it was an oral interview. So you needed to orally practice giving those answers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the confidence comes from. That's where dealing with your nerves comes from. That's where I'll pick up on all these ums and ahs and the fact that you're going off on a tangent over here that's got nothing to do with the question. You have to practice.
Yeah.
And if you do, I'm telling you, you can rock this interview. You'll be ready for those questions that you weren't expecting. Your nerves won't kick in. You'll have the confidence. You'll be able to explain things. But you got to do the work. You got to do the preparation.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it. So why do you think people are leaving organisations? Is it because, it could be a combination of things, but what is it you think primarily makes people just go, you know what, I'm out of here?
Well, I've actually been having this conversation because I too, hit the age of 50 and said, I feel like there's more out there. I think there's other things I want to do. And so I left, corporate Canada, not corporate America, to venture into my own workspaces and start this business kind of full-fledged. But I think the generations that are coming up behind us, that's kind of a philosophy they have anyway. They don't have this, I have to stay in a job for 25 years or 30 years. In fact, statistics show us they're going to have about 15 different careers, 15 different jobs.
Yeah.
So people switch because they want to see what else is out there. They want to expand their skills. They want to try something completely different. So there's a lot of different reasons people leave organizations, but I think it really is the norm. It's going to become the norm.
Yeah.
And that's something organizations also have to get used to. The employee's not staying with you for 30 years just because.
Yeah. And I speak to some employers now that sort of look at a candidate's resume and say, yeah, but look, this person changed job every 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
And they don't like that because they're thinking our investment in this person, if it isn't any longer than 2 or 3 years, it's probably not a good investment. But I think you're right. I think it's just a factor of where we're at. I think in Australia, the climate in construction right now is probably the most opportunistic it could be for any candidate, meaning the candidates are asking for big money. They're asking for, I want to work from home 1 day a week. I want to do this. And you know what? A lot of it, I think, has been a long time coming in terms of people understanding after COVID, there is a life after work. And we can do our jobs, arguably, depends who you talk to, from home and be arguably more effective in that time.
Yeah, I'd love to dive into that conversation even deeper with you, Garry, on maybe a different episode, but I'm actually writing a book, and it speaks to a lot of that organizations and leaders are going to have to look at things differently, think about things differently, understand who they're employing, and it doesn't have to be just because you did it a certain way, we need to continue that way. And in fact, being innovative and letting people have flex schedules and meeting their needs, your organization is going to grow.
Yeah.
But you have to be open to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It seems like I'm the only person on this planet not writing a book at the moment. And you mentioned your book. Can you let us know a little bit about it?
Yeah, it's actually called Knowing Who You Lead. And it's around lessons that I have learned over 25 years. Some lessons I learned well, and other ones I made mistakes as a leader. And giving leaders and organizations tools they can use to really get to know and understand the people that you're leading. Because if you do, and you understand them, then you're going to give them opportunities that they want. You're going to be able to deal with conflict. You're going to be able to retain your employees because you let them grow within your organization. It's kind of novel ideas. It goes against some of, the traditional leadership ideas, but it's been a lot of fun, and I love working with employees. And that's why I do this coaching job, because I love watching people reach their potential and grow.
That's brilliant. So plug for the book. When's the book coming out?
This summer. I'm just in the final stages. So yes, it's been a fantastic experience. I had to do a lot of growth on my own to do it. But yeah, it comes out this summer. So I'll definitely let you know.
Terrific. And just for the listeners again, it'll be Carrie-Lynn Hotson, and the book is called Knowing Who You Lead. And right. I'll hope it's on Audible, because that's my preferred platform. And I'll be...
Another one I have to do. Yeah, I want to do it. I like it too. So yeah, that's a whole nother... I have to learn how to do an Audible book.
Yeah, that's great. That is fantastic. So in the interview process, I think there's a lot of questions that candidates have, and it could be some very basic questions. It could be, do I bring up my religion? Do I bring up where I live? Do I bring up my past employer? And, in a negative light, perhaps. I'll keep shooting, because this might create some good dialogue here. Do I bring up that on Friday afternoons I need to pick up my child from daycare? Or is that interview too? Or what's your advice there?
Oh, those are great questions, because they're absolutely questions that candidates ask me, and they're valid. And again, it goes with the conversation we were just having a minute ago about people's work-life balance and what's important to them. I want to know whether I can share these things in an interview. So one of the first things I tell people is, again, we're going to go back to, what did you learn about the organization that you're applying to? What is their mission, vision, and values? Do they speak to being an inclusive and equitable employer? Well, if they do, then really they should be open to the fact that I do require somewhat of a flex schedule, because I'm just letting you know, on Fridays, I do need to be able to pick up my child. So I'm just asking, do you have flex schedules? When you talk about things like my religion or my background, again, if they're an equitable and an inclusive workspace, then that is actually one of the characteristics you want to tell them about, relating it to the job. This is how my unique experience and background is going to benefit you as an employer.
That is brilliant.
Speaking badly about your past employer can be tough, because I recognize that not every employment experience has been a good one. And so people try to, how do I politically approach this when I'm asked? It's never a good idea to speak poorly about your previous employer. But if asked an honest question about why did you leave, you can use things like, I saw potential in other employment. I was really drawn to your mission, vision, and values, and the fact that you are an inclusive employer. I really like your leadership style. So I'm not saying I'm leaving because they didn't have it, but I'm telling you why I want to come to you.
Oh, you're good. You're good. Carrie-Lynn, if I put my recruiter hat on at the moment, and I'm talking to a candidate that's got an interview on Monday, and I'm like, are you ready to go? You've got all the details, and they're like, yeah, I'm good to go. And I get a sense of, I'm not sure this person has done any preparation, but it astounds me that very few candidates will say to me, oh, Garry, can you tell me what you know about the organisation, because you're actually representing them. So you may know a heck of a lot about their pipeline of work, their staff numbers, their any sort of business intelligence you can tell us about that they're moving into, let's say, an industrial sector that'll really transform their business, right? And just key things like that. Nobody seems to sort of feel, and I understand perhaps all the recruiters don't have those answers, right? But I think it's worth asking as a candidate, is to say, what do you know that you can help me with? And some of that intel is priceless, I believe.
Absolutely, because again, I was just coaching tonight and we had this discussion. So one of the first pieces I do with a client is We meet for the first 2 hours and we figure out what do we know and what do we need to know. And so now they have homework and that's exactly what you're going to do. You're going to call the recruiter, you're going to call HR, you're going to talk to people that have done the job. You're going to go online and see what you can find. And I suggest do all of those things before you call the recruiter, because sorry, there's nothing more insulting than being asked something that's literally on our website, the front page. Like, prove to me you did some work. Yeah. But I have been completely impressed by candidates who told me, I was seeking this particular information. I tried to find it on your website. Unfortunately, it's not there. Could you share with me, your org chart? Or could you share with me your annual report? Or I was wondering about this. And I go back and I look at the website and realize it's not on there. Good for you, because one, you're showing me you know how to do research, and two, you pointed out something we should have had.
Yeah.
And then knowing that information that you've been able to give them, well, now they can answer the question better, because now they actually understand the industry and the job that they're applying for specifically.
Yeah. Okay, so now the $1 million question is, why do we always talk about remuneration and salary as the final question, as if it was like the elephant in the room that nobody felt comfortable about talking about, until the very end when somebody says, oh, is that it? Yeah, I think we've covered things. Oh, what sort of salary have you been considering? Or what are your thoughts there? It just does my head in that it is always the last thing on the table.
There's actually a lot of articles that I've been reading around this topic right now, because when it talks about inclusive and equitable job postings, should that actually even be a conversation, or should it be, because are you having the same conversation with me? Are you making the same offers with me as a white female or a black female or indigenous male? Like, why are we having these conversations? Because it really starts to make you wonder about equity. So there's that whole arena of conversation happening right now. The second piece is, if you can anticipate that question is coming up, then do your research. Again, know what the industry standards are. Know what it's fair to ask. And if they ask you why you're asking for that amount, be able to justify it. Be able to base it. Here's my experience. Here's what I'm bringing to you. I know industry standards are this, and therefore my ask is this. Rather than just some random number you've grabbed out of the sky.
I think that is exceptionally good advice. Fortunately, I was never asked that question when I was talking salary at job interviews, but I, in the time that I was interviewing candidates to join organisations I worked with, I actually used to, respect's not the right word, it was kind of, I was impressed when somebody sort of unapologetically says, what sort of dollars and cents are we talking here? Otherwise, perhaps we're wasting each other's time. Or secondly, you know what, guys, I'm a, as you say, I've got the bullets to shoot this thing through the park. So this is the kind of money that I think I deserve. And I quite respect that when as opposed to somebody that walks out and says, and we say, what was their salary expectation? And we go, I don't know. It meant they felt that it was just way too uncomfortable and perhaps unjustifiable, what they were looking for.
Well, and you make another really good point, because you said, that I can hit it out of the park, therefore I'm worth this much. And really, interviewing is all about, it's a business transaction. That's what people have to understand. I, as the panelist, are trying to figure out, who should I invest in? So if you can use that business mindset, even in this question of how much should I pay you? Well, show me where my return on investment is. You're going to pay me this, but given my experience and knowledge, I'm going to be able to do X, Y, and Z for you. You won't have to spend money on my training because I already have it. I can take that project and make it fly now. You don't have to wait 6 months. So productivity wise, I'm making you this much money. Like, if you can make those connections for them.
Yeah. That's really, really good. A thing that I've always done, and I don't know if this is good practice or well, it clearly is, but whenever I've had a job interview coming up and it's on Monday, and let's say it's the Thursday prior, I've done the dummy run, right? I've driven in, found where I'm going to park so I can sleep overnight and think, you know what, I'll be driving, because it's generally in the city. I'll drive in. I know where I'm parking. I know that the best way to go. I've actually spotted the building, so I know that I'll just go in there and I'll be in business. Now, that may sound really silly, but in my interviewing, when I was hiring people back in the day, so many people would arrive late and say, "Oh, look, I'm so sorry. There's just no. Did you know there's no parking out the front?" And I'd say, "Yeah, there's never been parking out the front, right?" What's your thought on that?
Absolutely, right? Or I didn't know you had to pay with a credit card, or I didn't know that I had to have change, or yeah, I mean, and the added part is, as panelists, I mean, we're going to be as patient as we can, but we're also on a structure. We've got interviews lined up back to back to back to back. So now you've messed up our entire schedule by being late. And why would you want to do that to yourself?
Yeah.
Like, this is a stressful enough situation. And now you're totally off your game because you had to run across the parking lot. You're all sweaty. You come rushing in and you're not mentally prepared. You should be getting there 20 minutes early, half an hour early, because if my last one was supposed to be 45 minutes and they only lasted 15 because they didn't have any answers, and I come down to see if the next candidate's there and you're sitting there waiting for me, oh, you just made me bonus points because I get to eat lunch after this one.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I've often wondered, and it was one of my questions today, is turning up early rude, or is it potentially, as you've just put, it could be a point scorer?
Yeah, I mean, so you're early, and if they don't need you or can't take you early, who cares? You get to sit there, mentally prepare, rehearse your answers and be calm. And if they can, well, then that's even better. You won't pay as much parking.
So, talking about being calm, right? Again, my experience, I've seen some people sit across from myself that are absolutely wetting themselves with nerves. And I think you can agree, it's just so uncomfortable for everybody in that room. What can somebody do to get rid of their nerves, get in there, crush the interview? And is it a whiskey before you go in, or what is it?
So actually, one of the things I did for candidates is I created a YouTube channel called Carrie-Lynn Hotson Job Interview Coach, so that I could actually answer some of these questions. So I have literally a video on what should I wear. And I tell people things like, put a dry fit shirt underneath your dress shirt so that when you're sweating, it absorbs the sweat and not, your shirt. Don't wear your best friend's suit because it looks good, but it doesn't fit you properly. And so now you're sitting there and you can't even move. Like, I've seen all these things happen. Pick out your outfit beforehand, because just like you said, just like the parking issue, you go to grab the suit to put it on and realize, I wore that to a wedding and I've got a stain all over it. So now I can't wear that. What am I going to wear? And now you're panicked because you don't have clothes and they're all wrinkled. So it's like little things, but they're big things.
Yeah. Yeah.
The clothes you wear make you feel confident. Don't dress up, because that's going to make you feel professional. You're going to walk in with confidence. So all of the small things are important. And when it comes to nerves, I do a lot of work with candidates too about, like, how do you learn? So for example, like, some people learn by being body kinetic. So it means by moving. So you all know those people that, twist and turn in their chairs or tap their foot. It's because that's how they learn. They actually have to physically engage to learn. So if you're going into an interview knowing that's how you learn, then wear a ring on your finger and spin it under the table, or an elastic, or something that you can move that's not going to be distracting, but it helps engage your brain.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to sit there stiffly, not move, and then literally you can't get your brain doesn't work.
Yeah. That's good advice. That's really good advice. Is there anything lastly that I've missed that you feel that it'd be really good to get out here?
I really believe that if people do interview preparation, and there's a million different ways you can do it, and if you go to my website, I've literally given you a whole bunch of different ways to do it. You are investing in you, and that's what people need to remember. If you learn how to interview properly, it's like riding a bike. You're never going to forget the skills that I'm giving you, and you'll be able to apply them to every interview you go to. You can use the same process, but it's going to build your confidence, and you're going to feel like, I can do this, rather than having that terrifying, nerve-wracking experience that was horrible. And, and then you don't have any confidence. And especially if you're interviewing in a workplace where you work and you were going for promotion, it can be really embarrassing, because that was your boss that was interviewing you and you bombed it. So now you don't even want to apply for the next position.
Yeah.
So people just have to invest a little bit of time and energy into it, and it's worth it.
And I totally agree. I think, the fact that it's sort of like we finish our education or we're continuing our education, we give no thought about anything to do with the interview process. And then we say to ourselves, right, now I've got to go and land myself a really good job. And with some of the simple things that are the big things, as you've pointed out, that can really make the difference in an interview and make a very big difference to your career and your family and everything in between.
Absolutely. Yep. And that's why I had so much fun with it. I love doing this job. I get to meet tons of great people, and I learn about a new job every time. I've never done any of these jobs.
That's so cool. So for the listeners, one more, you've got some great resources on YouTube. Where can they find that?
So that's Carrie-Lynn Hotson, job interview coach. Yep. And my website is www.jobinterviewcoach.ca. And if they do hashtag Carrie-Lynn Hotson, it will all pop up, all my different resources and social media links. So that helps too.
Terrific. So Carrie-Lynn Hotson is spelled CARRIE-LYNN, Hotson, HOTSON.
Like I have a hot son. I actually have 3 of them.
Well done. It's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you so much for helping me with my improving my interview skills when I'm ready for my next role. And I really appreciate. I think our listeners will get a lot out of today, and I'll be jumping on, looking at your resources. I'll be certainly downloading your book, and congrats on the book, the upcoming book, Knowing Who You Lead. And once again, thank you so much from Sydney, Australia, Carrie-Lynn Hotson.
Thanks very much.